Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given. This podcast episode discusses the details of domestic violence. If this episode becomes triggering while you are listening, practice self-care and turn off the episode. If you need to talk to someone, 1-800-799-7233. All the links are provided in the show notes.
Hi, everyone. This is Brenda J. Welcome to Real People, Real Voices, where people get to have a voice, and some for the first time. These are mini podcasts that focus on healing. I am so excited. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Brenda J. Today we have Vanessa on the show. Vanessa is a domestic abuse survivor, and she is bravely sharing her story with us today. Vanessa, we want to acknowledge how much courage it takes to speak up, especially after you've not shared your story publicly in 20 years until recently. We are truly honored that you chose to share your story with us now. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, and I just appreciate being able to share my story.
Yes. Hi, Vanessa. We're so glad that you're here. So to start out, can you share with our listeners a little bit of your story?
Yes, it's interesting because I think I've shared with you that it didn't feel like, it's been something that's been, I think, about 20 years now. And so it does feel like it was kind of a lifetime ago. But at the same time, it's something that I think telling my story or sharing my story is going to be helpful. And hopefully, like, being able to help others with my story, knowing that you can get through it. Sometimes it takes a long time, and sometimes it can take a shorter time, and just depending on where you are at that stage and making the decision to, try to get out of a situation and move forward. It's not always easy, but it's definitely doable, and you can overcome the challenges in that way. So I guess, a little bit about my story. I was in college, so definitely young, impressionable, and I was from a small town. It was very isolated. It was probably, I think I had 89 kids graduate with me in my class, but it was really small, and I decided to go to college and was super excited to get out of town, away from my parents. And not that they were not amazing, but they were. I had grown up with really great parents that were very, very supportive and said, I'm going to start my life and go to college. And so wasn't there for very long. And I remember meeting this person that eventually ended up becoming my husband. But at the time, it was like, you're in college and there's just people everywhere and kids, and everybody's like having a lot of fun. And he was very handsome and very, very gregarious, just super, super outgoing and personable, and pursuing for quite a while. I think he pursued me for over a year, and I kept kind of staying away from him. I just felt like he was very outgoing, but he was also pretty pushy, and I wasn't used to that. And so he pursued me, would ask my friends to get my number, would talk to my brother and ask him to like hook us up to like get to know each other. And I just kept resisting. And then I finally broke down and decided to date him and see what it was all about. And so we went on a date, and then within 2 weeks, he was like, I want my family to meet you. And that was just a super quick thing. When you're young, it's a compliment, and you're like, how did this person choose me? And he was an athlete. And so I was like the chosen one. I felt so special. And so we dated. And I remember starting the first year that we were dating, little things would kind of pop up and progress. If he was at an away game or out of town, I would be home. And if I was out with my friends, like, I would get a phone call. And if I didn't answer the phone, progressively messages would get a little more aggressive. Like, you need to get home. You need to be home. You need to answer the phone when I call. And again, kind of thought, as I'm young and naive, I was thinking, it's just like, I'm the chosen one. I feel so special. And it was just that kind of thing. And it kept happening and progressively kind of would keep increasing. And then I broke up with him at one point, and then he convinced me into getting back together with him. And then we left college and I moved to his hometown. He was away for a few months and I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter. And so I got pregnant and moved where he was. He was out of town for work. And so I moved with, as I was pregnant with my daughter, and a little more isolated, was away from my family, and it continued that way. And then some of the verbal and mental abuse started happening. And I was scared because I was young and I was stuck being pregnant. And I was like, how am I going to get out of this situation? And he ended up convincing me to get married. So we got married. And I think I left probably a total of about 5 times. And at one point, I was getting ready to leave, and we went to counseling one time, and he basically told me that I couldn't be there anymore because I told the counselor, the person that we were seeing that day, I said that he was physically abusive, and he told me I couldn't stay and live in that same place with him at the time. So I had to move back to a place where his family lived, and I didn't go back to where my family was, which I should have. And so we had been together one time in that month that we were kind of on hiatus with the counselor, and ended up finding out I was pregnant with my son. And so I was like, now I have 2 children. I can tell that I'm in an increasingly worse situation, and this person's getting aggressive and physically abusive. And so it happened several times where he was physically and mentally, verbally abusive with me, continually like controlling my cards for credit cards or like any spending. I was very isolated away from friends and family. I couldn't call my mom and dad. Like I had to go and across the street to a different area where I could use a payphone to call my family because I wasn't able to use a phone. Never had a car that I could drive, so I always had to like ask if I could use the car to go to a grocery store or what have you. And then there was a lot of infidelity in between. I found a ton of different things where I knew that he was cheating on me with so many different people. And I had just a lot of different things happen where I just was so unhappy. And I finally, during this time also, I had decided that I was going to go to a Bible study. I already had kind of grown up with knowing God and having a relationship with God, but I wasn't fully 100% dedicated. And I think once I started going through some of the physical abuse, I was like, I need God to get me out of this. And I just prayed about it all the time. And I started going to a Bible study with my kids. And we were married at the time, and he would never come with me. My husband at the time would never come with me. He would go to the bars and go out. And he would tell me I'd have to find my own way to get to these Bible studies or go to church or anything like that. And I would still find a way. And I'm like, I'm going to get there. However I get there, I'm going to make it. And I will bring my kids with me. And so just praying continuously for God to like help me get through that. I felt like I could have checked myself into a mental hospital because I just was like, I'm alone and trying to raise my kids. That saved me. So I feel like after all of the years, like it was 9 years of this, moving back and forth, moving back with my parents, or finding another place to live where I could just raise my children in safety. And eventually he did end up abusing the kids. And so I would send my children to go see their dad different times. And like I'd have to hide a cell phone in their bag so that they could call me in an emergency. And I always felt like it was something that I had to do. Like the state was going to get after me for not letting the kids see their dad, but I knew better. So I was always afraid for my kids. But then eventually I just got to a point where, like, I mean, they would call me crying. He would lock them in a room, or he would like pull the phone out of the cord out of the wall so they couldn't talk to him. They couldn't call me. And so there was a lot of different things that happened. And so I finally said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to let the kids go and see him anymore. And he'd called the police on me that I wouldn't let him see the kids. And he would threaten to take the kids away from me and say that I was a terrible mom. So I just ended up having to really just put my foot down and make those decisions that were just super important. And so eventually I learned to have a thicker skin and figured out like really just God saved us, and started getting more and more involved in church and praying to God and just asking for the blessings. And I think that eventually, just as time went on, I got stronger and stronger. And so I filed for a legal separation, and then I was scared to like get a full divorce because I was like, that's so final. But then eventually I said, divorce is what I need to do and completely cut the ties. And so filed for divorce. And then years went by, I decided to forgive him because I felt like that was the only thing that could heal my heart, really. And so when I did finally forgive him, it was the most important thing that I could have done, just to let things go and to start really healing and being even a better parent. But, I made those decisions. That was the best thing I ever did. And I think that he had eventually ended up having 10 kids from 8 different women.
Wow.
However, he lived his life, it was definitely could always caught up to him. And I remember hearing about different girls that he dated. There were always really sweet women and really great people. And somehow they would kind of fall for his charm and that kind of thing. And eventually he ended up at one point met this younger person. And then, they ended up getting married and she tried to leave him and he ended her life. So it's one of those stories that ended very, very sadly. And so he's in prison probably for the rest of his life. But at the same time, like it's sad, so sad that that happened, but I'm just so grateful and thankful that it wasn't me. And,
Yeah.
just know that God had a plan. And like, I feel like my life right now, I want to revolve around helping others that have been in the same situation or going through the things that I went through because it's just so important. Like that's my mission to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Wow. So it sounds like he was abusive in every way except spiritually, which is good because spiritual abuse is tough.
Yeah, that would be
Mhm.
very tough.
Yeah, it is. We both went through
Yeah,
spiritual abuse, so yeah.
right. Yeah,
Thank you so much for sharing that. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
of course.
And how were you able to heal? What types of things did you do? And what supported you? Who supported you and in your healing process?
Yeah, my family around me, like I always grew up with amazing family and friends, and I feel like they were always there to support me. So just having such a great foundation was huge. And I know some people don't have that. So I was very fortunate in that regard, like to have an amazing mom, amazing dad, my brother. I mean, my sister was amazing because my sister is just a lifesaver. I mean, I didn't tell anyone really my story except for my sister at that point because she was the only one I could tell. I felt like I didn't want to tell my parents because it would have devastated them. And my sister, I would like have to ask her because I feel like when I would go to these Bible studies, they would always tell me, you can pray for him, and through him, God will heal him and help you, and you should stay together and try to work things out and all these different things. And I was asking my sister, I was like, how do I do that? How do I continually pray for him and heal him through me, like with my words and my prayers and all of that stuff? And just said, this just keeps happening. It's never going to change, and allowing infidelity, allowing abuse, and being isolated and treated so terribly. And I was like, I just can't do it anymore. And I did it for so long, but I was like, I'm raising these kids and I don't want my children to see this behavior and treatment. And it's like, I don't want them to think that that's normal behavior.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, just like my village was so huge and so positive and helpful, I found therapy and went to counseling for a long time. And I just worked daily. I mean, I just went to church and really poured my life into God and tried to help volunteer and doing different things. And so everything I tried to do, I went back to school. So I mean, I worked a couple of different jobs to help raise my children because I wasn't getting child support at all. And I went back to school, had a couple jobs and just worked through it and just kept going. I mean, I felt like some days I looked around and I was like, what can I sell to pay my rent? And other days I was like, thank you, God, for all your blessings. I mean, it didn't matter like what I had monetarily or physically. The things I had were not important as long as I had my health and my family. And so all those things just really helped.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like you had a
It's made me
journey, but
stronger.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad you had that support system with your
Yeah.
family.
I
It's
didn't
so
even tell
important.
my family, and say in my podcast that was the biggest mistake I made was not telling my family.
Yeah, I know.
So,
That's hard.
Yeah. I'm sure they understand though after everything you've been through. So after talking with you, I learned that you were able to go on and be in a healthy relationship after everything that you went through. What did it take for you to recognize what was healthy? How were you able to heal enough to be in a healthy relationship with a healthy person and not fall back into an abusive situation? And was there anything specific that helped keep you from repeating that pattern?
That's a tough one. I feel like I've had a couple of different relationships where I've been with someone for a long time. I've stayed in a relationship for a long time, and I just feel like it's so important to find someone and have a great foundation when it's the right person.
Mhm.
And that person needs to be a positive, uplifting, encouraging, spiritual, believes in God and loves God as well. And those things are so important. And for me to find that healthy relationship, I just know that I never would have put up with again. And knowing the red flags and seeing if someone was even raise their voice, I
Yeah.
would have a really hard time. Like that would trigger me, or if anyone got in my face aggressively, that really never happened. Again, if I ever saw like aggressive behavior, I was like hightailing it out of there because I'd rather be alone. And my dad always said, or would you rather be miserable all the time or lonely some of the time? And I was always like, I would rather be lonely some of the time.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you don't always have to have someone to make you feel like a whole person.
Yeah.
And so being healthy on the inside helps, make
Yeah.
better choices, but sometimes you don't always know right away.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that's important.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in because I know I spent years going to counseling and just working on myself. And I think that that really helped me recognize the difference between an unhealthy and a healthy
Very,
relationship.
very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed I was talking to a friend that recently and her brother was yelling at the top of his lungs, like irate, angry. And after all the podcasts and everything and all the healing we've done, I was like, you realize that that's not okay, even one time. It's not okay at all.
No.
That's abuse.
Yeah. And
And
I've
so,
been,
yeah,
and I've been around friends where I can hear their relationships with each other and the way they talk to each other. And I'm like, I could not put this, I
yeah,
couldn't do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just want peace and no drama.
Yes.
So, Vanessa, you've worked many jobs over the years, including being a hairdresser while providing for your children. Now you're using those skills and your life experience to help others. Can you share a little bit about how you're able to take what happened to you and turn it into something good to support your family and to help people now?
Yes, definitely. Gosh, I feel like everything that I've done, God's put in my path, and I've scraped tooth and nail to get to where I am. Basically, always pushing myself to grow and to keep going and to keep learning. And I just remember, thankfully, I went to cosmetology school right around that college time, those college years. So I ended up doing hair, and I worked like a couple different jobs. And I remember bringing my kids along with me to different people's houses. I'd go cut hair whenever they'd come to me. And so, like, that helped, besides doing it in a salon, I got to do it at home as well. So that was extra income coming in. I worked at a Montessori school during the early days or, early hours so I could be at school with my kids and they would basically they got half tuition off. So I was
Mhm.
getting inexpensive childcare while I was working there part-time. And then I met a lot of parents and did hair on the side. So when I was meeting the parents, I was either going to their house and they would bring in neighbors and have everybody, it would be a big hair party. So I did that. And then they would come to me, which was fun. I loved doing that. And then I decided to go back to school and I was going to school for hospitality and tourism because I'm a people person, so I love that. And then I ended up deciding to not completely go into hospitality, but I ended up going back to school and got my teaching hours for teaching at a cosmetology school. And so I did that for about 6 months, and then they ended up moving me into the director's position. And so I got to be a director at a hair school for about 4 years. And that was the best ever. I loved it, absolutely. And then I met someone who was a recruiter and said, I'd love to have your resume. And so I decided they shut the doors of the academy because there was some things going on there. It was a franchise and they weren't doing so well. So once they closed the doors there, I said, yeah, I might as well try recruiting. And I had done a little bit of that with the hair academy because I was like hiring some of the staff and some of the office people. So I kind of had my hand in that a tiny bit and it was fun. So going into recruiting was such a blast because I was like meeting people, I was helping people with jobs. I mean, some people, I know there was a couple that had lived in their cars for a year, and I said, let's go. Like, I'm going to help you. Let's get this job, and we're going to do what we can. We're going to build your resume. We're going to talk about, interview skills. And so these people were moving from a car to an apartment, and I can't say that was me giving the opportunity. It was more of like God working, I think, through me to help these people. And Yeah, it was just amazing. So I got to help in that way. And I forgot, like when I was working at the academy, back at the hairdressing academy, I was able to utilize the school to help mothers and children. And so I would start advertising for moms and kids that were, single moms or people that had been on, homeless or having a hard time to come in and get their hair cut. And then us also donated like shampoo and conditioner products, hair products for them so that they could take care of themselves, at least in a way to, make them feel better and try to help them get back into the workforce and feel comfortable. And I did a lot of volunteering for like Queen for a Day, where they would come in and help with like interview skills and dressing for success and all of that. So I started doing that and really helping like kids on the streets. They would have shelters where we'd go in and I'd take the students and we'd do all these haircuts for the kids. And so it was just giving back.
Wow.
And it means
I'm
so
just
much.
like, wow, as the list goes on
I
and on and on.
know.
Like,
That's
It was,
amazing.
this is like a perfect example of how you can take what's happened to you and just be such a blessing to others through it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Wow.
such a passion. I just
Yeah.
love it. And
My goodness.
I could never do enough. Like, I just think it's just the most amazing. Like I said, I feel like God put me in place to learn how to cut hair so I can help people that way.
Yeah.
And as a recruiter, to help people with jobs and
Yeah.
Yeah.
like resumes and, interview skills and all of that is just like such a blessing.
Yeah. I'm sure that person that was in their car could greatly appreciated all your
Yeah.
support and assistance in helping them get back on their feet.
Whew.
It was amazing, amazing story.
Yeah, I love it. So, as we begin to close, I'd love to ask you one final question. What is one gold nugget, one piece of advice or encouragement you would want to share with our listeners that might be helpful to them on their healing journey?
Yeah, and I thought about this and reflected on this a lot. And I was just thinking, like, the biggest thing I could ever say is forgiveness, honestly, I think is the biggest nugget because even if that person did something to you and hurt you, you can still forgive them. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can still forgive. And you can, it's just let them go and they can heal and you can heal. Because if you hold that anger and that bitterness, it just hurts you.
Yeah, it does. And we just did a podcast on on that our last two. So,
Unforgiveness.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yes,
it's
that's
just
very true.
huge.
Did
Just
you listen to that one?
I did,
Uh,
yes. I love your podcasts. They're just so they just fulfill you. You learn so much and just hearing the little nuggets that come out of your podcast, it really just makes your day, and like know that there's people out there that really care.
Yeah.
that's awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for coming on to the show, for being brave enough to share your story. We believe that telling our stories is very healing, not only for the person sharing, but for the person listening as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes. Thank you again, Vanessa, for trusting us with your story. And thank you to our listeners for joining us today. And I know you're going to be encouraged by hearing her story.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed just being able to speak from the heart, and I just appreciate it. And I know God is here helping me.
Yes. Yeah, there was a piece here.
Yay! You did it. You did
Woo!
it. Yeah,
Was my
man.
voice okay? I feel like my voice is hoarse, but it has been kind of like going in and out.
No, it sounded great at the beginning, and at the end, when you talked about forgiveness, it went hoarse, so it made it sound like you were crying. It was really good.
Well, I feel it.
It was like you were choked. It made you sound choked up. You were like,
Forgiveness. I did, I really did.
It's very genuine.
We're gonna have some bloopers at the end of this one, probably.
Oh yeah, probably.
I know it's been a while. I'm always disappointed when we don't have a blooper.
Yeah, but we
Yeah,
got
bloopers.
some. I messed up at the beginning, so there's definitely gonna be some bloopers, and
Oh
we'll
my
leave some
gosh,
of
I
the end
love
on
it.
there.
She'll put them at the end, and it's good because especially if it's a really serious one, and I'll wait, and I'm like, oh, now bloopers.
Vanessa, we want to acknowledge how much courage it takes to speak up, especially after you've not shared your store. Let's start over again.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening. And until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.